Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time, so
So you
you
don't
don't have
have
to.
to. I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Ephraim, here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. From the very beginning, the sky has been both our most unreachable dream and our greatest inspiration. Long before engines and airstrips, before blueprints and metal wings, humans were watching the birds and wondering, what if? Across ancient civilizations, stories about flight were woven into religion and myth. The Greeks told of Daedalus and Icarus, the father and son who built wings of feathers and wax to escape Crete, only for Icarus to fly too close to the sun, his wings melting as he plummeted to his death. The message was both a warning and a prophecy. The sky was freedom, but freedom came with danger. In ancient China, centuries before any European dreamed of aerodynamics, kites became a cultural art form and a test bed for early flight. They were used in warfare, communication, and even philosophy. According to some records, Chinese inventors may have experimented with man carrying kites and primitive rockets as far back as 1000 BCE. One story tells of a Chinese official named Wan Hu who allegedly tied rockets to a chair in an attempt to reach the heavens. The explosion that followed may have been apocryphal, but it captured the same spirit that would later drive modern inventors, the relentless desire to defy gravity. In the Islamic Golden Age, a polymath named Abbas ibn Firnas constructed a glider in the 9th century. Chroniclers say he leapt from a tower, glided for several moments, and crash landed, injuring his back but surviving. His experiments are considered among the first scientifically documented human flight attempts. Nearly a millennium later, Spanish scientists would name him a modern airport in his honor.
Throughout the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, humans continued sketching dreams of flight. The most famous of all came from Leonardo da Vinci, who filled notebooks with designs for omnithopters, machines that mimic bird wings, and early parachutes. His sketches showed a staggering grasp of lift, drag, and propulsion, centuries before the words themselves were defined. But his designs never left the page, and for hundreds of years the sky remained untouchable. Still, the idea refused to die. The dream of flying became a mark of genius and madness alike. The sky called out to humanity not with promises of ease, but with the challenge of the impossible. Every culture that gazed upward and wondered how to join the clouds, and each attempt, successful or catastrophic, brought us one step closer to understanding how to break Earth's grip. And so began the long, relentless journey that would take humanity from feathers and wood to jet engines and stealth bombers.
Before there were airfields or engines, there were dreamers, and with parchment wings, and dangerous amount of courage. One of the earliest recorded pioneers was Abbas ibn Firnas, like we said, a 9th century Andalusian inventor whose story stands as one of humanity's first controlled flight experiments. Firnas studied birds obsessively, crafting wooden frameworks covered in silk and feathers. Chroniclers recount how he climbed a tall hill near Cordoba and leapt, gliding gracefully for a few hundred feet before tumbling to the ground. Though he suffered spinal injuries, his design hinted at an understanding of lift and air resistance, a foundation that would echo through history. Across Europe, scattered records describe men who tried to imitate the divine freedom of birds. Around 1010 CE, a Benedictine monk named Aylmer of Malmesbury fashioned wings from willow and cloth. From the top of his abbey he soared nearly 200 meters before crashing, later lamenting that he had forgotten to add a tail for stability, a lesson engineers would rediscover centuries later. In the East, flight experiments often blurred the line between ritual and engineering. Chinese inventors were experimenting with gunpowder and bamboo tubes as early as the Tang Dynasty, creating what some historians call the first rocket-assisted devices. A few legends speak of men who attached themselves to arrays of small rockets, some with catastrophic results, yet these stories fueled a national fascination with propulsion that would reappear in rocketry nearly thousands of years later.
The Renaissance brought art and anatomy into the equation. Leonardo da Vinci, fascinated by both the movement of birds and the possibilities of mechanics, sketched an astonishing range of machines. The ornithopter, which could flap its wings using pedals and pulleys, a helical air screw resembling a modern helicopter rotor, and a parachute shaped like a four-sided pyramid. Though none of these designs ever flew, they revealed an analytical mind centuries ahead of its time. Leonardo correctly theorized that air could be compressed and offer resistance, implying an early grasp of aerodynamic pressure. By the 17th and 18th centuries, dreamers were becoming engineers. In France, Besner, the locksmith, designed flapping paddles connected to by a shoulder harness, essentially a wearable wings. In Portugal, Bartolomeu de Guzmão presented a working hot air balloon prototype to King John V in 1709, demonstrating that heated air could lift an object. Sadly, fear and superstition led the court to declare it sorcery, halting his progress. Meanwhile, small leaps in science were unlocking big truths. Mathematicians like Isaac Newton defined the laws of motion, and physicists began to understand the interplay of lift, drag, and thrust. Inventors such as George Cayley, later called the father of aerodynamics, built gliders that could actually carry a person. By studying wing curvature, he identified the core forces that make flight possible, and even wrote the earliest descriptions of fixed-wing aircraft and propellers. Each of these early attempts ended in disaster, success, or somewhere in between, but every failure was a data point. Each cracked rib or broken wing taught a lesson. Lighter materials mattered, controlled surfaces were vital, and propulsion had to be steady and sustained. What makes this period so extraordinary is that it spanned nearly 2,000 years of independent thought scattered across continents, all connected by a single idea, that humankind was not meant to crawl when the sky was right there waiting.
By the late 1700s, the idea of flight had transformed from myth to a matter of mathematics and experimentation. The world was on the cusp of discovery, and humanity was ready to rise. The first great leap didn't come with wings, it came with fire. In 1783, in the small French town of Annonay, the Montgolfier brothers, Joseph Michael and Jacques Etienne, revealed something astonishing: a hot air balloon made of silk and paper held aloft by heated air from burning straw and wood. Before a crowd of dignitaries, their balloon rose into the sky carrying a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. All three animals survived, proving the air above was not poisonous, a genuine concern at the time. Months later, in November of that same year, Jean-François Pilatre de Rosière and Francis Laurent de Arlandes, what hell of a name, became the first humans to experience untethered flight. The age-old dream was suddenly real. But balloons, for all their wonder, could only drift with the wind. Inventors wanted control. They wanted machines. In the early 1800s, an English baronet named Sir George Cayley began dissecting the mystery of lift and thrust. Through years of methodical testing, he discovered that curved wings generated lift, while separate propulsion was needed for forward motion. Cayley built small gliders, then full-sized versions, one of which carried his coachman aloft in 1953, marking the first recorded manned glider flight. Though the coachman allegedly quit upon landing, Cayley's work led the foundation of modern aerodynamics. He had essentially designed the first modern airplane, decades before engines existed to power it. Then came Otto Lilienthal, a German engineer and the first person to truly master gliding flight. In the 1890s, he made over 2,000 successful flights from hills near Berlin, meticulously documenting his results. His data became a treasure trove for future engineers, including the Wright brothers. Tragically, though, in 1896, a gust of wind destabilized his glider and he fell 50 feet to the ground. His final words were, "Sacrifices must be made." His death shocked the scientific world, but galvanized others to continue. Across Europe and the United States, experimenters were closing in on powered flight. Octave Chanute, a retired civil engineer, compiled Lilienthal's research and shared it widely. Influencing the next generation, Samuel Langley, head of the Smithsonian Institution, built powered models that flew successfully over the Potomac River. But his full-scale aerodrome would collapse twice into the water in 1903, mere days before history was rewritten elsewhere.
That rewriting came from two bicycle mechanics in Dayton, Ohio, Wilbur and Orville Wright.
But Ohio doesn't exist.
Were methodical, stubborn, and endlessly curious. They studied bird flight, built a wind tunnel, and tested over 200 wing shapes before settling on a design that worked. On December 17, 1903, at Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, the Wright flyer lifted off under Orville's control and stayed airborne for 12 seconds. with a short, shaky, and miraculous. By the end of the day, they managed a 59-second flight covering 852 feet, longer than most had thought possible. Unlike their predecessors, the Wrights didn't just get airborne, they solved the hardest problem of all: control. Their wing warp systems allowed pilots to balance, roll, and pitch, creating true, sustained, steerable flight. And while the world was slow to believe it, many early reports were dismissed as exaggeration. Their success spread quickly. Within a decade, flying aircraft were flying across countries, competing in races, and capturing the imagination of the public. The era was filled with forgotten heroes too. Figures like Alberto Santos Dumont, the flamboyant Brazilian inventor who became a Parisian celebrity for piloting his airships through city streets and later flying the first officially observed powered flight in Europe in 1906. His aircraft, the 14 Bis, took off under its own power without assistance and became a national hero. By the dawn of the 20th century, the dream of flight had officially become an industry. The torch had been passed from artists and dreamers to engineers and pilots. What began as feathers and fire had become metal and mastery. But the sky would soon turn from playground to battlefield. The next chapter of flight wouldn't be driven by curiosity, it would be fueled by war.
The Wrights proved that powered flight was possible, but war proved it indispensable. In just a single generation, aircraft evolved from flimsy wood and canvas gliders to roaring metal machines that could change the course of nations. When the First World War, erupted in 1914, airplanes were barely a decade old. At first, they were used only for reconnaissance. Pilots leaned over open cockpits to sketch enemy trenches by hand. Within months, soldiers began taking pistols and rifles into the air. Dogfighting was born the moment one pilot fired at another through spinning propeller blades. To solve the problem of shooting without destroying one's own propeller, Dutch engineer Anthony Fokker invented the interrupter gear, allowing bullets to pass safely between blades. His design gave Germany's Fokker Eindecker a deadly advantage and ignited the so-called Fokker Scourge of 1915.
From these fragile beginnings rose a new breed of celebrity, the fighter ace. Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron, became a legend with 80 confirmed kills. His bright crimson Fokker DR-1 triplane was as much a psychological weapon as a machine of war. Across enemy lines, French pilot René Fonck racked up 75 victories, renowned for his precise marksmanship. Canada's Billy Bishop and America's Eddie Rickenbacker each became national heroes, proving that courage and calculation could coexist in thin air. World War I also taught engineers hard lessons in materials, structure, and controlled surfaces. Designs such as the Sopwith Camel and Spad 13 pushed speed and maneuverability to its limits, unthinkable a decade earlier. When the war ended, thousands of trained pilots and surplus aircraft flooded civilian life. Barnstormers who looped through fairs and stunt shows, feeding the world's new fascination with flight. The 1920s and 30s were aviation's golden age of daring. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh became the first person to fly solo non-stop across the Atlantic in the Spirit of St. Louis, a 33-hour journey that made him a global icon. 2 years earlier, Amelia Earhart joined the ranks of record breakers. She later became the first woman to cross the Atlantic solo in 1932. Her disappearance in 1937 during an attempt to circumnavigate the globe remains one of flight's enduring mysteries. Others, Bessie Coleman and the first black woman to earn a pilot's license, Howard Hughes, who set multiple speed records, and Jimmy Doolittle, pioneer of instrument-only flying, expanded both the technology and inclusivity of the skies. Meanwhile, aircraft designers traded wood for metal and canvas for aluminum. Streamlined fuselages and retractable landing gear appeared. Radial engines roared louder, lifting planes higher and faster. In 1939, German engineers flew the world's first operational jet aircraft, the Heinkel HE-178, hitting a new age of speed.
When the Second World War began, aviation became the world's beating heart. Every major power poured resources into aircraft design. Britain's Supermarine Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane defended London during the Battle of Britain, turning ordinary young men into legends. I'm loving the names of these, by the way. Germany's Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf FW-190 dominated early skies, while the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber terrorized ground troops. The United States unleashed the P-51 Mustang, whose long-range escorted bombers deep into the enemy territory, and the massive B-17 Flying Fortress, a symbol of strategic air power. The Soviet Yak and LAGG series proved resilience and maneuverability on the Eastern Front. Japan's nimble Mitsubishi Zero ruled the Pacific until Allied technology caught up. Douglas Bader and British Ace, who flew combat missions despite having lost both legs. Then you've got Chuck Yeager, a U.S. pilot who first gained notice in aerial combat and would later become the first human to break the sound barrier. Claire Chennault's Flying Tigers, volunteer Americans who defended China with shark-toothed P-40s, inspiring propaganda and hope alike. And the countless WASP pilots, women ferrying bombers and fighters across the U.S., proving that heroism wasn't bound by gender. All of these were produced from World War II and made their own legends of bravery and tragedy alike. War also forced innovation, pressurizing cabins for high altitude, radar for navigation and targeting, and jet propulsion refined into reality. Near the world's end, Germany unveiled the Me-262 Schwalbe, the world's first operational jet fighter, and the rocket-powered Me-163 Comet. Too late to change the war, but early signs of the jet age to come. By 1945, aviation had matured from fragile wood frames to steel monsters capable of crossing continents and carrying unimaginable power. Humanity had learned to command the skies, but at a devastating cost. The next era would transform flight once again, from a weapon of war into a symbol of unity, progress, and global connection.
When the dust of World War II settled, the world was left with a surplus of planes, pilots, and progress. The same technology that once divided nations now connected them. Flight had become faster, safer, and steadily profitable. From warplanes to passenger planes, during the 1940s and 50s, the dream of commercial aviation exploded. Military bombers and transport aircraft were converted into airliners, giving birth to a new kind of travel. The Douglas DC-3, originally designed before the war, became the workhorse of early passenger flight. It could cross the U.S. coast to coast within just a few stops, changing how people viewed distance. Companies like Pan American World Airways, TWA, and the BOAC began offering scheduled international flights. Air travel was no longer a carnival trick, it was the future. Soon after, engineers wanted more speed, more range, and more comfort. This led to the first generation of pressurized aircraft, cabins where passengers could finally breathe and relax above 20,000 feet without freezing.
I was going to say 2,000. Oh gosh.
Then in 1952, Britain's de Havilland Comet took to the skies as the first commercial jetliner. It was sleek, quiet, and astonishingly fast compared to propeller planes. Unfortunately, early models suffered catastrophic mid-air breakups due to metal fatigue, a painful but vital lesson in jet design. Engineers learned from every failure, and soon after, Boeing and Douglas Aircraft Company built the aircraft that would define the modern age of flight.
Again, I'm going to say it. I am loving the names that these people put for their planes. Like, some of these just sound cool as hell.
Yeah.
In 1958, the Boeing 707 entered service, ushering in the jet age. For the first time, transatlantic travel was measured in hours, not days. Celebrities, politicians, and business people took to the air, and air travel became the ultimate symbol of sophistication and progress. During the 1960s and 70s, airliners grew larger, faster, and more efficient. The Boeing 747, nicknamed the Queen of the Skies, first flew in 1969. With its wide-body design and iconic upper deck, it could carry over 400 passengers. The 747 revolutionized global travel, making international trips accessible to ordinary families. Douglas's DC-10 and Lockheed's L-1011 TriStar followed, competing in range and comfort. Meanwhile, the Concorde, a joint effort between Britain and France, broke every speed record. In 1976, it began regular transatlantic service, flying from New York to London in just over 3 hours, faster than the rotation of the Earth's shadow. It was supersonic, glamorous, and exclusive, reserved for the wealthy elite. Despite its technological marvel, Concorde's story was bittersweet. Sonic booms, fuel costs, and maintenance issues kept it from mass success. Yet it remains a symbol of what humanity can achieve when ambition outweighs practicality. Now, looking at the heroes of the high sky, this era also produced legendary pilots and test flyers who risked everything for advancement. Chuck Yeager, mentioned earlier for his World War II service, became the first person to break the sound barrier in 1947, flying the Bell X-1 at 700 miles per hour. Then you've got Jacqueline Cochran, one of the world's most accomplished female aviators, became the first woman to break the sound barrier in 1953. Howard Hughes, an eccentric billionaire and engineer, helped shape the airline industry with innovations in design and safety. Then you had Neil Armstrong. Before he walked on the moon, he was a test pilot flying the experimental X-15 rocket plane, which reached the edge of space.
Excuse me. By the 1980s and 1990s, air travel would become an ordinary miracle. The introduction of computerized flight systems, fly-by-wire controls, and turbofan engines made planes quieter, more efficient, and easier to fly. Airlines expanded routes worldwide, and the term frequent flyer entered the modern lexicon. Safety records improved dramatically. Air traffic control systems, radar, and satellite communication reduced collisions and made global flight coordination possible. Aviation became one of the safest modes of transportation in history, a stunning reversal from the fragile gliders of just a century before. But humanity wasn't done yet. The same technology that powered jetliners pushed us towards the stars. Rocket planes like the X-15 blurred the line between aviation and astronautics, paving the way for spaceflight. NASA's Space Shuttle launched in 1981 and was essentially a hybrid aircraft flying back to Earth on wings after orbiting the planet. Civilian aviation also began to explore the fringes. Experimental aircraft like the SR-71 Blackbird, capable of flying at Mach 3, and stealth designs like the F-117 Nighthawk redefined what was possible in atmospheric flight. By the dawn of the 21st century, the world had gone from canvas wings to hypersonic renaissance, from curiosity to domination of the skies. As aviation evolved from biplanes and bombers into sleek jets and stealth aircraft, the line between science and speculation began to blur. The modern era of flight isn't just defined by engineering breakthroughs, it was also filled with secrecy, innovation, and mystery.
Following World War II, the race for speed and power dominated the skies. Jet engines, pioneered by Frank Whittle and Hans von Ohan, ushered in the jet age, allowing aircraft like the Boeing 707 to revolutionize commercial travel. Suddenly, the world was smaller. What once took days by ship now took hours by air. But in military aviation, stealth and speed became the name of the game. The Lockheed U-2 and SR-71 Blackbird, both developed under the CIA's Skunk Works division, pushed the limits of altitude, speed, and secrecy. The SR-71 could fly faster than Mach 3 and higher than 85,000 feet, so high that the curvature of the Earth was visible from the cockpit. By the 1980s, stealth technology, first publicly announced with the F-117 Nighthawk, changed aerial warfare forever. Using radar-absorbing materials and faceted designs, these aircraft could evade detection almost entirely. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber refined that concept, becoming one of the most advanced and expensive aircraft ever made. With secrecy, though, came speculation. Many of the world's most advanced aircraft were tested at classified sites like Area 51, fueling countless theories about what was really happening in the desert. The government didn't even officially acknowledge Area 51's existence until 2013, decades after it had already entered public lore. Programs like the Aurora project, a rumored hypersonic spy plane said to replace the SR-71, captured imaginations worldwide. Though no official evidence has ever surfaced, repeated skyquakes and mysterious contrails over the American Southwest kept believers convinced that something fast and powerful is still flying under the radar. The U.S. isn't alone in secret projects either. Russia, China, and other nations have all developed advanced prototypes that never reached the public eye, each one rumored to be faster, stealthier, or more capable than the last.
UFOs, UAPs, and government disclosure. Where there are secret aircraft, there are also unexpected sightings. The post-war boom in UFO reports closely match the timeline of classified military flight testing. Many flying saucers were likely misidentified prototypes, but the phenomenon took life on its own. In recent years, the conversation has shifted from UFOs to UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. with governments worldwide, most notably the United States, releasing declassified footage and reports acknowledging encounters that remain unexplained. The Pentagon even established the AARO, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to formally investigate them. Whether these objects are experimental aircraft, advanced drones, or something not of this Earth remains an open question. But the public fascination with flight and the unknown continues to soar. Commercial aviation and the future of flight. While secrets fill the skies, the rest of the world enjoys unprecedented access to air travel. Supersonic flight made a brief appearance with the Concorde, but safety concerns and fuel costs grounded it in 2003. However, new projects like Boom Supersonic's Overture aim to bring back fast passenger travel in an eco-friendly way. The push towards electric aviation, autonomous drones, and even space tourism with companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin shows that the sky may no longer be the limit. From fighter jets that can think for themselves and to reusable rockets that land upright, modern flight sits at the intersection of technology, ambition, and mystery. Today, aircraft are more advanced, efficient, and powerful than ever, but the same human curiosity that drove the Wright brothers still fuels us. We look up at the contrails or strange lights and wonder what's really up there, and what might be coming next.
From dreams of wings to supersonic jets, humanity has always looked to the skies with wonder and ambition. But as technology pushes boundaries further than ever before, the future of flight is no longer just about airplanes. It's about redefining what flight even means. One of the greatest challenges of the modern age is sustainability. Aviation accounts for a significant portion of global carbon emissions, pushing innovators towards greener alternatives. Companies like Airbus, Rolls-Royce, and Aviation are pioneering electric aircraft that aim to make short-haul flights completely emission-free. The Aviation Alice, a fully electric commuter plane, promises quiet, efficient, and environmentally friendly travel for up to 9 passengers. Meanwhile, hydrogen propulsion, long seen as impractical, is gaining renewed attention. Hydrogen-powered engines produce only water vapor, and test models like Zero Avia's aircraft hint that commercial hydrogen planes could take flight within the next decade. The skies of the future may hum softly instead of roar. The next evolution of personal flight is vertical. Cities worldwide are preparing for the age of urban air mobility. Flying taxis, cargo drones, and the personal air vehicles designed to reduce congestion and transform urban transport. Companies such as Joby Aviation, Lilium, and Volocopter have already tested eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing craft. These quiet, efficient helicopter-like vehicles could soon shuttle passengers across cities in minutes. Once dismissed as science fiction, flying cars are on the cusp of reality. Some governments, like those in Dubai and Japan, are already establishing regulations and air corridors for future aerial taxis.
Artificial intelligence is reshaping aviation from cockpit to control tower. Advanced autopilot systems now manage entire phases of flight, and AI co-pilots are being tested to assist or even replace human pilots. Military drone programs have already showcased the potential of peril of autonomy. AI systems can analyze threats, plan routes, and execute missions faster than any human. The controversial Loyal Wingman project, for instance, pairs autonomous aircraft with human pilots to create hybrid combat formations. But as machines learn to fly themselves, humanity faces new ethical and philosophical questions. What happens when no one's at the controls? The concept of flight has extended far beyond our atmosphere. Space planes like Virgin Galactic VSS Unity combine traditional aviation with suborbital spaceflight, blurring the boundary between pilot and astronaut. NASA's Ingenuity helicopter, which flew on Mars in 2021, became the first aircraft to take power flight on another planet, an astonishing milestone in the history of aviation. It proved that flight isn't limited to Earth's skies. Private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Rocket Lab are leading the charge toward a new era of commercial and interplanetary flight. SpaceX's Starship, designed for reusability and massive payloads, represents a vision where aircraft and spacecraft converge, opening the door for human colonization of Mars and beyond. Every innovation in flight comes with lessons, some written in triumph, others in tragedy. The pioneers who risked everything taught us resilience, curiosity, and humility before the sky. The daring test pilots who broke the sound barrier and pushed beyond Earth's edge taught us that progress demands courage.
Today's engineers stand on the shoulders of legends. Orville and Wilbur Wright, Amelia Earhart, Charles Lindbergh, Chuck Yeager, Neil Armstrong, Sally Ride, and countless unnamed pilots whose bravery paved the way for tomorrow's skies. And tomorrow's skies? They won't just belong to planes. They belong to drones, shuttles, and crafts that soar through both atmosphere and space. Humanity has transcended the dream of flight. Now we dream of infinity. The future of flight is not a horizon, it's a launch pad. Before we wrap up, a quick word from today's sponsor, W Energy Drinks. Whether you're chasing the horizon, studying flight, or just trying to make it through a long workday, W gives you the boost to keep soaring. With zero sugar, natural caffeine, and a flavor that hits like a tailwind, it's the drink that keeps you moving forward. Don't just fly through your day, dominate it with W.
And that brings us to the end of our journey through the skies. From ancient gliders that dreams of Daedalus to the Wright brothers' first powered flight to modern stealth bombers and experiments beyond Earth, humanity has always sought to conquer the air. Every innovation, every failure, and every daring pilot has carried us closer to the infinite sky. We want to hear from you. Send us your stories, your questions, or ideas for future episodes to echosofthepast.pod@gmail.com. Who knows, your suggestion might inspire the next deep dive.
And for our next episode, just in time for the spooky season to get really ripped up, we'll leave the skies beyond and explore the world of spirits again. We'll cover a few fascinating types of spirits, their origins, legends, and the mysterious tales that surrounded them. Expect ghostly encounters, folklore that chills, and a dive into the supernatural that will make you look twice at the shadows around you. Stay tuned because the spirits are waiting.
Thanks for wandering through histories with us on Echoes of the Past.
If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself,
but we promise not to.
See you in the next Echo.